All right, looks like the recording is going now. All right, it is 11:30 a.m. Thank you for coming back, everyone. Looking at the meeting, I see we have 97 people in here, which is
Wow,
amazing.
it is.
Um, so I just want to thank everyone for making the time for this and for this training is really important, especially as we head into yet another year of having to kind of change things on the fly, to address things going on with the pandemic and its impact on the economy. So thank you everyone for your dedication to this and your attention. Um, now, so this is module 2, from 11:30 to 12:30 Eastern Time. And we are going to be having the fraud, waste, and abuse training. It's been a few years since we presented this. And as usual, we will be having IHCDA's legal counsel Dave Stewart present this. For those who have not been through this training with Dave before, it is an absolute delight. And Dave has some great content, and he's also just a super fun storyteller. He usually has a lot of good anecdotes to go along with his training. So I really want to pass things off to him to give him as much of his full hour as possible. And Dave, just so you are the only thing standing between these 97 people and lunch. No pressure.
Oh, gee, thanks, Thomas. I appreciate that.
And so without any further ado, I'm going to pass things off to Dave Stewart and let him present on fraud, waste, and abuse. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm assuming that everyone can see the screen. Is that correct, Thomas?
I can definitely see it. Yeah.
Okay, excellent, excellent. First of all, let me thank everyone for all the work you do and everything that you do to help people with their energy burden throughout the state. I know that having worked here with energy assistance and also now working with the rental assistance, um, I know that we have a lot of people out there who are definitely in need, especially with this COVID situation. And you guys are right there at the front line, selflessly helping people, have these needs met. And it's a thankless job. I know it, you know it, but we're only in this because of the fact that we want to help people. If anybody's doing it for the money, let me know. Because I want to find out where that is. But as Thomas said, we try and present this every year at the trainings. Of course, last year we couldn't do it. We also take this, I guess, for lack of a better term, show on the road. Sometimes we'll have 2 or 3 LSAs who get together and want us to come down, and especially if they've had a lot of turnover, and we get a chance to present this. This slide presentation is available to you, and I'll give it to Thomas, and Thomas can get it out to you guys if you want it. The episode is being recorded, and so the commentary, I guess, it could be available too. But let's talk about investigating fraud, waste, and abuse, how it benefits you, and how it benefits, frankly, your applicants. I got a little situation here. There we go. Well, Thomas, there we go. Okay, let's talk about the purposes of investigating fraud, waste, and abuse. And don't laugh at my slides, please. The first reason is to ensure that the benefits are received in the correct amounts and only to those individuals who are eligible. Obviously, we don't want to be giving out benefits to people who don't deserve them or don't need them. The other purpose is to recover tax dollars obtained by participants through fraudulent activities, unintentional participant error, administrative error, or noncompliance. People, we do make mistakes. We do make mistakes in how we process. We get in a hurry, and that's one of the things that we'll talk about later on. But what you'll see is If we follow the process that we have put in place, the errors are minimized on both sides. Believe it or not, some of the errors that are made by the participant are kind of caused by us and how we present stuff. So the third reason is to deter future occurrences of fraud and or noncompliance within all energy assistance programs and to help maintain the program integrity. As you all know, this program gets audited like every other program gets audited by the feds. And when they find something wrong, that money has to be returned. And it's either going to get returned by us or by you. So that's the reason why it's always good to make sure that we have a program in place that has rules, and you're going to hear about those, and you have been hearing about them all morning. You're going to hear about them this afternoon and tomorrow. So make sure that you follow those. Okay, let's talk about the terms. First, let's talk about fraud. Fraud is defined as the wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in a financial or personal gain. Waste is defined as consuming, spending, or expending thoughtlessly or carelessly, and then abuse is defined as misusing or using improperly or excessively. Fraud is a legal term, and so make sure that that's not a term that you throw around just because you can't figure something out. Uh, the three terms should not be confused with noncompliance. Now, noncompliance is the failure of the individual participant to act in accordance with the rules and regulations of that specific program. That does not necessarily mean that there is fraud or that there was fraud intended. So while all three have a serious financial implication for the agency, fraud is the one that will likely be the most investigated. Okay, now let's talk about, is it fraud or is it not fraud? Fraud occurs when a participant knowingly and willfully provides false information about his or her circumstance. It also occurs when a participant intentionally fails to report changes in his or her circumstance, which you all know about, which would normally make them not eligible. To constitute fraud, they must know that the information that they're providing is false and that he or she did so with the intent to gain something of value, in this case, assistance. Someone who provides incorrect information by mistake is not committing fraud. Also, that they do not commit fraud if he or she is unaware of their responsibility to provide certain information. That's where the training comes in. That's where the information given to the applicant, the correct information comes in. We don't want to push someone into doing something that someone might consider to be fraud when we gave them wrong information or misleading information. They may also provide false information for reasons other than financial or personal gain, in which case they are not committing fraud. There may be something else there, but it's not fraud. For instance, they may have an embarrassing situation that causes them to fail to report the actual circumstance of their situation, or there may be other reasons that need to be taken into consideration for concealing the truth or failing to report changes such as a threat. We've all seen situations where someone may have a restraining order against someone. They mutually violate it. The guy, I'll use a guy in this instance. The guy comes back, wants to live there. She doesn't want him there, but she's afraid that if she tells people that he's there, there could be some physical consequences for her. And so in those cases, we have to work through those situations and understand those situations and then deal with those accordingly. If you get into one of those situations, talk to your supervisor or call Thomas or one of those guys and say, hey, this is what happened. We did find out that there was someone else in the household. The other person had income. It wasn't reported because he'd already abused her several other times and she was afraid it might happen again. And she didn't even call the police at that time because she was afraid. So talk those situations out. Do what's best and most fair for the recipient in those situations, for the applicant, I mean. Let's talk about early detection and prevention. Early detection and prevention is designed to detect and prevent fraud prior to the authorization of benefits. Efforts need to be taken to keep fraud and noncompliance from occurring in the first place. By practicing early detection and prevention, the intake worker, and that's the term I'll use. Some people don't like that term, but that's the term I'll use. You know what I'm talking about, okay? The intake worker can refer applicants who meet certain conditions to their supervisor for in-depth examination. Now, when I say that, what's going to happen here is what your agency has in place to handle this. It may not be exactly like I'm explaining it, but overall, you should talk with someone else to say, hey, this is what I see. What's your thoughts on this? This begins, though, with thorough training of all the intake staff. The intake staff must be capable of conducting detailed eligibility interviews and identifying cases that need to be referred to their supervisor. An initial step is to check any applicable ineligibility list if you have one. Some do, some don't. This will let you know immediately if that applicant should be processed further. I know that certain agencies used to have a list of people who they know have done things in the past, and they have a watch list to make sure that these people don't apply again and get benefits from someone who may be new to the agency or new in that position in the agency. Another step is to make sure that all applications are fully completed and no information is missing or doesn't make sense. Now, let me just say that a lot of time and effort has gone into these applications. They get scrutinized every year to make sure that we're not asking for information that we don't need, that would cause a delay in processing. They're scrutinized to make sure that we do have information that we do need just in case. That's the reason why we say nothing should be left blank. If it's something on there that shouldn't be on there, then as Thomas and his team goes through this and looks at it, and you tell them, hey, no one really fills this out. No one really has this information. The question gets to be, is it needed? Thomas and his group will look at it. If it's not needed, they'll take it out. So just be confident that everything that's in there is something that has to be in there. And so questions should be asked in all situations where the intake worker needs further or more definite clarification. Trust your gut. Quick example. Someone comes in and they fill out the information and the information is not complete. Okay. There's some issues about, who's in the house and stuff like that. Well, there's a couple of names on the application that the person says, well, that person is no longer here and they aren't working at all. Well, wait a minute. You're saying they're no longer here and they aren't working at all. If they're no longer here, it doesn't matter if they're working at all. And so the person just felt, that seems a little funny. That seems a little funny why they said that. And when I spoke to them, they told me that was the one thing that seemed a little odd, but they were pressed for time. They were getting ready to leave and go home. They had 2 applications they had to process, and this one may not have been as bad as some others, so they went ahead and put it through. All right. They went ahead and processed the application. How did I get involved? I got involved because somebody sent in a complaint. Legal here has a fraud line, and somebody sent in a complaint and said that this particular lady had somebody living there, and they know for a fact that she gets some kind of assistance. Well, it just so happened that the assistance that she was getting was Section 8 for her rent. Well, come to find out, she was also getting energy assistance. So when we called her and talked to her, she was like, oh, no, 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 da, 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 da. And so I told her, I said, well, man, let me explain to you who I am and what I do. And I explained to her, I said, now, here's the way I handle stuff. I will call you and tell you what my issues are. And if you help me resolve those issues, it stays with me. If you don't help me resolve those issues, then it gets turned over to one of the inspector generals that handles all this stuff. And I told her, I said, I deal with inspector generals from Health and Human Services. I deal with inspector generals from HUD and also from Treasury. And so because this is federal money, then that means people who are convicted go to federal prison. And she said, oh, wow, yeah. I said, let me tell you the difference between federal prison and state prison. State prison, you get credit for good time. So if you get a year sentence and you do 6 months, you'll get 6 months for the time that you spent and 6 months of good time if you don't get in any trouble. Federal prison, you get 2 years, you do 2 years. I said, but then again, that may not, involve your situation. I'm just telling you, what I've heard and what we're investigating right now. Is there anything that you want to tell me? She said, well, yeah, he is staying here, but I needed somebody to take care of the kids when I went to work. And so that's why I let him move back in. Okay, now she said he was staying there to watch her kids, and then she said the words move back in. So what we did was we worked with her, we got the money back, we redid her assessment to include him. And in that particular case, everything worked out because she was, at least it appeared to be, she was cooperating and actually told us that it went back even further than the complaint that got sent to us said. So it was a situation where the person who was doing the intake, they felt something was wrong, felt something was funny, didn't act on it. And had we not gotten this complaint, we would have never known. And that person would have gotten that benefit to the detriment of somebody else who probably qualified for the benefit. Okay? So let's talk about investigations. Even though early detection and prevention are utilized, there will still be situations where people receive benefits they're not entitled to. Once this happens, notification is usually through a whistleblower, an anonymous tip, or an agency monitoring or some other action. And so it's the old thing about no matter what you do, no matter how much you try to prevent stuff, stuff is going to happen. And because of that, put everything in place, do the best you can, and then work from there. Okay. Let's talk about what an investigation is. An investigation is a detailed examination or search to determine if an individual has committed an act of noncompliance or fraud and received a benefit to which they're not entitled, resulting in a claim. Now, during the investigative portion of the process, they may not have received the benefit yet. But due to the results of the investigation, you've caused them to not get a benefit that they're not entitled to. So you've stopped it in its tracks. And that's a good feeling when you sit there and say, oh, well, yeah, that they were going to get, some kind of crisis money, and they really didn't deserve it because the information they gave wasn't true. So that's awesome when that happens. I really like that when we catch it ahead of time. Okay, let's talk about some investigative steps. Now, these are some things that everyone can do. Not all of this is going to apply to you because you may not have access to all this. But it should start with an in-house investigation. These are things that can be done at the agency through the agency's database and records. Determine the eligibility factors. Based on the information received from the applicant, are they eligible for assistance? If there is a specific eligibility question for the applicant for a certain time period, consult the appropriate guideline or manual for that time period. As things change as we go forward, make sure that you're not using data information to make your determination. Okay? Review background information. You can do this by looking at a previous application. If something looks funny or sounds funny, look at a previous application. Look at any relevant databases that you may have, or go to a public or government website. The cool thing about previous applications is that you will find people on there who this is like their third address in like 6 months. And the previous application that you had a totally different address. Well, the question is, where are they living at? Are they really living there, or are they trying to get a benefit that they don't deserve based on somebody else's address? All right, let's talk about in-house investigations. Does the information received from the applicant conflict with any information found during the background check or received from the informant. That's you got somebody saying, "Hey, this is what I'm telling you is going on over there," and then you do a check, and all of a sudden that's different. You got to get to the bottom of that and find out what's going on. Documentation. Now, even though we're going paperless, in most situations, you're still going to have, if it's not a hard file, it's an electronic file. It's vital that you document in chronological order each step taken in the course of the investigation. This will provide a detailed and complete record of the processes used and the information obtained. Documentation will include the investigator notes, as well as copies of any relevant documents. These are not just important for the agency records, but also in situations where if it gets out of hand, it has to go to law enforcement. The first thing they're going to look at is, what do you have? What can you show me? What can you, lay out for me? Because in a lot of situations, the dollar amount is not going to be as high as what law enforcement is used to dealing with. And so we have to make them interested, keep them interested. I used to be a commissioner for law enforcement in Vigo County, and that was one of the big things that we used to deal with all the time. Is there a threshold? Is there a threshold that we react to certain stuff and other things we don't? Well, you like for them to react to everything, but if you got someone who took $300 and you got somebody who committed capital murder, where are you going to go? And so these are the kind of things that, by doing our own homework and putting our own stuff together, if we do need assistance, we're able to give them all the information that we have. Okay. And so to make that more workable, there are 6 basic questions to consider while collecting information during the course of an investigation. Okay. So let's start with who. The case should include the names, addresses, and phone numbers of the applicant and other contacts made during the investigation. That includes whistleblowers and informants. You know, um, it's always interesting to me when we get one of these complaints from people on the hotline, how much information they have about somebody. And the first thing that you figure out and find out is that this is a former friend, or I guess now former friend, former someone that was in a former relationship or something like that. Um, Normally it's a boyfriend or a girlfriend who's complaining about this. They know about this and really had no issue with it. Basically capitalized on the benefits until things went south. And now all of a sudden they want to tell on this person. They'll tell you a lot of stuff. Social security numbers, all kind of crazy stuff. And so make sure that you chart who you got that from. And if there is some kind of relationship and you can figure that out, put that in there too. That could be important later on. The next one is what? The case note should reflect all the eligibility factors being investigated, such as income, household composition, resources, living arrangements, etc. Make sure the applicant is eligible in all areas of eligibility, not just the area that prompted the investigation. Because what could happen is, while you're in there looking at one thing, something else pops up. And then you got to include that in there and start checking that out, because that looks funny. It's amazing how that happens when you're investigating one thing and something else pops up and you're like, oh, didn't know about that. All right, when? Write down the date and time of all contacts made during the investigation. This will be needed should the case be appealed or if law enforcement gets involved. If we have a situation where someone gets denied and they want to take that further, by you having all that down, dates and times and all that kind of stuff, that's going to really help in us being able to continue to deny this person. It also helps should it get beyond us and go to law enforcement. Okay, where? Write down the correct address, location, and time of any interview, home visit, or other fact gathering activity. Again, we have to show that we know what we're doing. We can't be talking with someone, say from the feds, and they're like, well, what happened and where? Well, the other day I was over, what other day was that? Oh, yeah, let's see. It may have been Tuesday. No, it wasn't Tuesday. I wasn't at work on Tuesday. Well, it was sometime last week. Well, if we do that, the impression that's put out there is that you don't know what you're talking about. And if that is the case, you know, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to waste the time on it because that's what they feel it is, a waste of time. Why? Write down the reason for the investigation in the first place and the reasons for any actions on the case, why you did this, why you called this person. What's going to come into play is you're going to have in your notes that I called Carol Jones because I was told that Carol is a friend of this person and she's aware of this. And then you note in there, I called Carol, Carol told me blah, 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 blah. And then Carol also told me that this. And so this is what I did after that. You know, it all flows. And the better it flows, the better the better is our chances of getting this money back and taking action against the person who took the money in the first place if necessary. And how? Document the way in which the information was received and any pertinent facts about the process. You know, seems like a lot of work, but it seems like a lot because I have it laid out in this fashion. A lot of this stuff just flows once you get used to it, and you know, just keeping the proper notes will knock out 3 or 4 of these, you know, by itself. Okay. So let's go to potential sources to assist with the investigation. One is employment records. Does the name match on the income documentation? If you have access to a social security number, does it match on the award letter or a tax return if you get one of those? Does a participant work for the state of Indiana? And here's the cool part. If they work for the state of Indiana, you can go through us and I can get records from the state of Indiana for this person because it's an investigation being done by the state of Indiana against someone who works for the state of Indiana. Now, there's a process that I have to go through, but if I'm involved, we'll have a discussion about it. And if we need to go through that process, we will, but we can get copies of records. We have worked with FSSA, Department of Revenue, and Workforce Development in previous investigations and previous cases to get information. And what's cool about this is that FSSA has a big, huge investigative unit. So what I always do is if I have someone that I'm worried about, I contact FSSA and I say, hey, this is what I got, some information on somebody. I'm assuming that they may be getting benefits from you. A lot of people who get benefits from us get benefits from FSSA or one of the other programs here, like, you know, housing assistance or something like that. So the records had better match up. If you're saying that you got 6 in your household and this is who it is, and you're single, FSSA better have the same information. Because what we'll do is, because they're so much bigger than us, we'll turn them loose on the investigation, and then they'll come back and tell us everything they found. So that's just another thing that we use to make sure that we're getting the proper information. You know, we're not out here trying to you know, beat people down or be rude to people, but if you come to our program trying to get some money illegally or illicitly, we're going to jump on it and we're going to try to get it back. Utility and phone bills. In some situations, you're able to contact the utility or phone service providers to determine who is billed and who pays for the service. I know that some utility companies want to be a little secretive and cloak and dagger, excuse me, with that information, but we're trying to pay them some money. And most of the times, you know, if you have a question about some stuff, they'll cooperate with it when they understand that we're trying to send you some money to cover this bill. We just need a couple of things answered first. So you may get somewhere with that, you may not, but it should be one of the things that you have listed as on your things to investigate. Landlord or mortgage company. Contact the landlord and ask if he knows who lives in the rental property. If it's a rental property, obtain a copy of the rental agreement or mortgage papers if you can, if you got an issue, to determine who's the party on the contract. Determine who pays the mortgage or pays the rent. You know, you'll have people contact you wanting rent for a certain address and their name is not on anything. It's not on the lease, it's not on anything else. That's the reason why those things are important. You know, we can't get in a hurry to the point to where we're trying to get this stuff processed and we drop the ball on some of this stuff because it sounds good. I actually had somebody tell me it sounded good. What do you mean it sounded good? Well, I talked to her and she was really nice and she started crying and I almost started crying when she started crying and I was like, wow. I mean, the way that this person was explaining this to me, I almost started crying. But it still didn't mean that everything was legit. So I just told her to go back, and what we did was we did go back, and we actually ended up doing a conference call where I was on the line too. And it wasn't really a good cop, bad cop kind of thing. It's just that I come off that way sometimes. I don't know why. I think I'm a nice guy. I think I try to help people, but people will come back and say, you know, that guy on there, you know, that Stewart guy, he was kind of rude. Well, I'm not rude. I'm directed to the point. And when we're playing with this federal money, that's the way you have to be. So don't be taken in by that, you know, oh, well, we're just trying to do, you know, trying to do this and trying to do that. If it looks funny, it looks funny. And unfortunately, we have to, you know, fix it and make sure that everything is right on it before we go forward and give that benefit. All right. This one, this one I like, but sometimes I think it's kind of funny because people just don't understand that when you do something out there in the public, there's a public record. And I just, it just boggles my mind when I tell somebody, well, you're not married to Frank anymore. And Frank has his own house in so and so. How'd you know that? We do our homework. So what I got to do? I got to pay some money back? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I don't know, Thomas, do we still blacklist people? Do we blacklist people?
Not so much at the state level. Usually we kind of let that decision go to the LSP. If it's a
Okay.
severe situation, we might consider it.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thanks. But so both of these areas are valuable sources of information. You'll be able to determine recent loans, judgment, mortgages, and real estate transfer activity, other participant, or the property owner. You can also search divorce, custody, and marriage records. And then I have three things on here that you can use. My case, which is the Odyssey court records, which is free. If you put in my case Indiana, you can put in somebody's name. It says my case in.gov, but you can just put in my case Indiana, Google it, and it'll pop up. And you can go in there and you can look for anything that's a public record. You won't find juvenile stuff in there, but you'll find divorces, you'll find evictions, you'll find all kind of stuff in there. If someone had an issue with a credit card, that'll be in there, and there's no charge for that. The other thing is Beacon Property Records, and that's from a Snyder Corporation. Now, John Snyder, who ran that, I'm not even sure if John's still alive, but I knew I first met John about 15 years ago, and he's actually a licensed engineer and a licensed architect. And John has this corporation where they can research property records. And now, Beacon will not have every county and stuff like that, but if it does have the county that you're looking for, It'll bring you up the whole property record. It'll show you whose name is on the property for tax purposes. It'll tell you when the property was transferred. It'll give you a layout of the premises. You know, the size of the property, the house. It'll give you the number of bedrooms, all that stuff on there under Beacon. The third one is DocsPop. Now, the cool thing about DocsPop is that there's a fee. Okay, there's a fee to use DocsPop. But once you pull up the screen, if you put sign up now, click sign up now, it'll give you 6 free searches. But that's 6 free searches per computer. So if you're in there on your laptop and you get those 6 free and you come back later and try to get some more, they're going to ask you for a fee. And so, but DocsPop, it's put in by the counties, and not all the counties participate. But between Odyssey, my case, and Odyssey and Beacon, you should be able to look up a lot of the records. And also, a lot of the local assessors have their records on there, and those are public records. And so you should be able to go in there and look at that, and you'll see at least who owns the property. You know, if the person tells you that, no, this is my house, and I'm not renting it, you'll be able to go in there and see if their name is actually on that property as being the owner. Okay. Another one, and this is kind of tricky, it's not as easy as it used to be, is sheriff and police departments. And I have underneath there, if available. Are there any records of law enforcement calls or investigations? Did law enforcement make a trip to the participant's address? Did law enforcement list the names of all persons living there? This is what you get into when it gets really, really, really tight and there's a really, really, really nasty issue. Normally, if it's something like that and we're asked to assist, normally we'll handle this part of that for you. But there are a lot of people out there who have friends in law enforcement or friends who have friends in law enforcement. And if there's some information that you need, you may be able to get that from them if there's some kind of a occurrence or situation that involves that. Okay. Confidentiality. I like talking about this part. The more people who know about an investigation, the greater the chances of the subject finding out. Now, nobody likes to hear this, but there may be a situation where someone who you work with may be doing favors for their friends or certain people who they know, friends or family. Okay? I know that it doesn't involve anyone on this call, but there could be somebody out there who does that. When you're doing an investigation, normally the odds of your supervisor being involved in this are very slim, because here's the reason why. If they were wanting certain favors for somebody, they would handle the file themselves and not give it to you. So once you start an investigation, so let's say you got a buddy who's at a different LSA. You shouldn't be calling that person and saying, hey, we're doing this investigation over here, and there's this Thomas Hartnett Russell guy. He's doing all kind of stuff over here. And the one lady says, well, what do you mean? Oh, we think he's doing this, we think he's doing that, we think he's doing that. Well, you know, he's my brother-in-law. Oh, so you think, well, let me talk to him. Well, no. Well, the cat's out of the bag then, you know. And sorry to use your name, Thomas, but I'm looking right at you, so sorry. but those are the kind of things where you always need to keep this close to the vest, as they say. You know, try to involve as few people as possible that you communicate with or work with. Again, if you're not sure where to go or how to take it further, consult your supervisor. And if they don't know where it goes, they should consult us or call Thomas. Thomas and I communicate a lot about different things, not necessarily anything concerning fraud, waste, or abuse, but we talk about a lot of different things. We kick things off each other's shoulders to say, hey, what do you think about this? And so Thomas kind of knows a lot about how we do things. And so he would know whether or not this is something that needs to be kicked up to us, or he would know whether or not to call us and ask us, hey, man, is it something that we need to talk about? Or he'll say, hey, I got a situation. Let's talk about it and let me get your thoughts on it. And that way, again, it's not about playing cloak and dagger and trying to catch people. It's about ensuring the integrity of the program. That's what it's all about. I know you guys don't want to be out there busting your butts every day and doing what you do and communicating with people and trying to help these people stay warm in the wintertime and cool in the summertime and make sure that they're not being, kicked out or having their power turned off and all this. I know you don't do that just for the fun of it. You really care about making sure that these people get some assistance. And so you also cared and you want to make sure that it goes to the right people. And so that's the part of it that, confidentiality, it sounds like we're trying to sneak it around, but we're not. We're just trying to make sure that what we're trying to do doesn't get out and therefore ruin the investigation. Let's talk about final steps. After a violation has been identified, investigated, and supporting documentation has been reviewed and corroborated by the agency, action needs to be taken against the participant's application or against their benefits if they have already been distributed. Actions can range from the rejection of the application to the termination of benefits and a request for repayment of funds. The case can also be submitted to federal officials if the situation warrants. As I sit here right now, I can count on one hand a number of times that we've had to bring the federal feds in full boat. And when I mean full boat, I mean I take a case file that has about maybe 50 or 60 or 70, maybe 100 pages and turn it over to them. And once you turn it over to them, you're out of it. This person can come to your office and say, hey, change my mind, I want to pay it. And you say, I'm sorry, but that's been turned over to the federal officials and they're handling it now. I'll be more than happy to contact them for you, but they should be getting a hold of you soon. I can't do anything for you. And we have it down to a system here when we assist and stuff that, we always try to keep the person from the LSA, involved in what we're doing. And we'll even have situations where we'll have you be on the call with us when we call these people, because normally you've already called them, you've already talked to them, and they pretty much blown you off. And so, and I'm not saying that if we call and talk to them, that they aren't going to blow us off too. But I want you to listen in on how we do it for your situation so you may learn something so that you can do it that way. This is not a situation where we're yelling at anyone. This is not a situation where we're mad at anyone. This is a situation where all we're trying to do is get these funds back. And if someone tells me, oh, you go to hell, okay, thank you. Obviously, you don't want to resolve this today. And so I will take whatever actions going forward as I have to take. And so thank you for talking to me. And I hang the phone up. You're not going to mess up my day. I'm going to dinner at Olive Garden tonight. So, I'm just, I like the salad. So you're not going to mess that up for me. And so that's what we do. Okay. So let's talk about ICDA involvement. The program staff and legal department are available to assist at any phase of the investigation if needed. However, be sure to make this program staff aware of all substantiated or suspected acts of fraud, waste, and abuse. They will then contact the legal department if the situation warrants. Kind of got ahead of myself a few minutes ago when I was talking about that, but that's what that means. You're not out there on an island. And yes, there are a lot of LSAs out there. Yes, there's a lot of people out there, but don't think that that means that we're not going to make time to help walk you through this if you need help. Okay. On ICDA's consumer and partner websites, there's a link to a form that allows you to confidentially report incidents of fraud, waste, and abuse. From our homepage, just click on the About Us link on the left-hand side under the menu drop-down. Click on the Contact Us link, then go to the very bottom of the page where it says Contact. Click on the Fraud Report or Report Fraud, Waste, and Abuse link. Once you submit this document, it goes straight to our legal department. And then we'll contact you back and we'll talk about it. We also use that link for people who want to report stuff anonymously too. Okay. Appeals. There are appeal processes in place to allow applicants or participants to redress if they object to a certain decision or determination by the agency. It's outlined in each program's manual, and IACDA Legal is always available to assist with any interpretations or questions. It's very important that the procedure and the guidelines be followed, such as notice and timeliness. This makes the IACDA review process a lot easier. There's nothing worse than to have someone exercise their rights under the guidelines, and then we get involved and we find out that the LSA didn't follow the rules like they were supposed to follow them. Again, a lot of time and effort goes in to putting this stuff together to make sure that what we do is fair and beyond reproach. We don't want to have a situation where someone says, yeah, but they did this. And then I have to call you and say, did you actually do that? Well, yeah. Or did you not do that? Well, yeah. Haven't you read the guidelines in a while? Well, no. You know, that kind of stuff. All program integrity. Everything's about program integrity. Gotta have it. Now, I threw this in there because it happens sometimes. Subpoenas. Indiana Trial Rule 34C allows a party through an attorney to issue a request for non-party for the production of documents. And what they can do is they can ask for certain documents to be sent to them without actually having it in a form of a court order. And so, but it has to be issued by an attorney. It can't just be sent by anybody. This request is done through what they call a subpoena ducis tecum, which basically means bring me the documents or hand me the documents. It's Latin like all that other legal stuff. In the past, pursuant to Trial Rule 34C, we've contacted the requesting party in writing and generally objected to providing the requested information without an order from the court. Because normally that request, everything is overbroad and crazy and all that other kind of stuff. Our objection will be based on what stated below to include the HHS requirement of confidentiality. If you ever been issued a subpoena, be sure to immediately notify the IACDA legal department. Now keep one thing in mind. We are not able to represent you, and we are not able to technically give you legal advice. The advice that we'll be giving you will be programmatic advice about how you should handle these. And we'll talk about it. We'll talk about what kind of subpoena it is. We'll talk about why they asked for the subpoena, why you think they asked for the subpoena, and we'll talk about the whole situation. In the end, I will most likely tell you that you still need, if you don't have counsel, you still need to get counsel and run this by counsel if it's a serious matter. It could be just simply a point where they're representing someone who wants a copy of their own paperwork. At which point you can tell them they don't need a subpoena, they just need a release from that person to call in and say, hey, I want a copy of my own stuff. But they talk with somebody and somebody has told them, oh, you need a subpoena. So that's one of those things that when it happens, you're probably not going to be sure how to handle it. I'm telling you right now, if you contact us, we'll work with you on it and walk you through it. Okay? Ta-da! Questions. We will entertain questions, but I'll let you know that the last page is my information. And like I said, I'll make this available. And if we have any questions, Thomas, I don't know if we have any in the chat or anything.
So there is one that was in the chat that I did type an answer to, but I'd like to just kind of escalate it to everyone just so everyone hears the same information because it was a really good question. So Hannah Benko Storm asked, how do we handle situations where someone is a landlord and is not reporting rental property income as part of their application? We've had this issue with multiple clients. And so my answer for that was, if you can see in GIS that the applicant does in fact own multiple parcels of property and they are not reporting any rental income, then you are well within your rights as a steward of federal funds to require, as part of the application, that they submit their most recent 1040 tax return to prove that they do not have rental income from those properties. Just be sure that you document the request in the case file and any response. And I followed up with, if the applicant refuses to comply with the request, the application may be denied for failure to provide requested documentation. And just reminded that an applicant's signature on an application authorizes us to verify all information provided, including income information.
I like that answer. I like that answer. Mainly because of the fact that it's correct, it's detailed, and it's to the point. Just like we discussed previously. Excellent job. Excellent job, Thomas.
Thank you.
No, but see, what you guys need to understand, to Thomas's point, is that people who refuse to give us information, they stand the chance of being rejected. It's that simple. It's that simple. We are not obligated to give anybody assistance who doesn't want to follow the program guidelines, period. I don't care who it is. I don't care who they say they are. I don't care who they know or who they say they know. The guidelines are we have to have this information, and if you refuse to give it, we are within our rights to refuse to give you assistance. It's that simple. And you're going to have people say, oh, you got to give it to me. This is a no. You got to follow the guidelines. That's the only thing that has to happen, that you have to follow the guidelines. And there's a very nice way that you could say that, just the way Thomas said it. Hey, I'm sorry, but if we don't get this information, we may not be able to process you in this, and you won't get any funds. Sorry, but we need this information. Well, no one else asked for that. Well, we're not anyone else. So if you want to give it to us, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. So, any other questions? Wow, I'm impressed.
As a general reminder to everyone, if you're trying to ask a question, I think everyone is on mute right now, so you'll have to unmute yourself. Oh. If you are on the phone, you can press *6 to unmute yourself.
It's funny because we get a lot more questions when I'm in person, but I think that's.
Right. Can you go back to that slide where it had the information for the
websites?
the different websites for fraud that we can check for records? That was very helpful. I know you're going to send it out, but I'd like to give that to my team ahead of time.
That one?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, I'll be handing this to Thomas when I finish my presentation, so he'll be able to get it to you. But those it's amazing. Once you tool around in there, you'll be amazed at the stuff that you can find in there. Especially in my case, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there that you can find out about people. Hopefully you use it just for work, but there's a lot of other stuff in there. My sister found out that the house that she was thinking about buying has some liens that the title company didn't have listed. And so they were able to dodge that bullet. And so just basic stuff in my case, it's just amazing. Absolutely
Yes,
amazing. Any other questions? Well, I do plan on being on, is it at 3 o'clock, Thomas, when you have the other questions? 3 to 3:30, I think it is.
Let me double check on the time. 3:30 to 4.
3:30 to 4. Yeah, I do plan on being on at 3:30 also, in case people think of something between now and then.
Great, thanks for that, Dave.
Yeah, I'll be back on. So I always enjoy addressing your group. And as we've said, once we get back more to normal, if we can dodge this second round a little bit, we'll be happy to, come out and give this in person. Then we'll pass out. We also pass out hard copies, and we leave a copy of the electronic stuff there too. But I prefer, if we have 2 or 3 LSAs in the same area, that we get those together. We did one down in Jeffersonville, I think it was a couple of years ago, and they had, I think, 3 groups there. It was like 20 something people. It was awesome, and they fed us too. So I'm not saying that's required. I'm just saying that that's what happened down there with Phil's group. Phil invited us down, and he had several other, I think a couple other LSAs down there, and they did it as a group, and so that worked out really well. And Phil was nice enough to host it, and we got a lot of stuff covered. And there are several people afterwards who stopped to tell me about some situations that they were working on, and it worked out really, really well. And like I said, we're happy to do that. If you guys can get together with other groups and maybe have us come down and present this for you live, we can do that. Okay. Well, I don't want to overrun my time. I got 3 minutes, but I'll. Is anybody hungry? I mean, are they hungry? Are they hungry? You think? The disadvantage of this Teams thing is that you guys don't, provide any food, Thomas. What's the, I mean, I understand the situation, but I'm just the thing I liked about the lunch part of it is that it gave everybody the opportunity to fellowship and to meet people from other areas of the state that you may not frequent a lot. And I mean, everybody in your own area, but if you're down in Jeffersonville, you probably don't know a whole lot of people up in Lake County and or somewhere else. And so that's one of those situations that we hope to get back to normal. Don't be strangers, people. If you have any issues, shoot me an email. You'll probably be better shooting me an email than you will calling me, because there's a lot of times I'm not particularly in the office, but I have my laptop. So, all right. Thank you, Thomas.
Hey, Dave, thank you. That was a wonderful presentation, and ending on time, which is always helpful.
I respect their time like I hope they respect mine. There you go.
Absolutely.
All right.
So it is.
Have a good day.
Is just about 12:30. I'm going to end this recording. We will be posting it again, hopefully by the end of this week. And everyone can go enjoy lunch. We will be reconvening at 1:30 Eastern, 12:30 Central. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Thomas.